Welcome to the Uncollared podcast. I'm Father Jason.
And I'm Frank Fontana. And on this show, we believe there's something powerful in the search for the truth.
No topic is too big or too small. No questions are off limits.
And that is a good thing because I like to question everything.
So settle in and join us for some laughs and some deep thoughts and
maybe even some enlightening moments here and there.
We sure hope so.
Yeah.
This is the
Uncollared podcast.
What'd you think? What a great episode, huh?
Yeah, the last episode, Aggie, our divorce attorney, was pretty enlightening, to say the least.
Enlightening. Okay.
But I think we only just scratched the surface of really talking relationships. I want to take today to go deeper and unpack a little bit of the things we couldn't talk about. Like death till we part. That's a scary statement. Until death do we part. How does that translate in your world? Like, what is that supposed to mean?
So death do we part. Now that term, isn't that like a church term? I thought.
That's what I'm saying. How does it work in your world?
So we, in the episode, I was trying to get you to answer the question, but this is why we have the follow-up. But the difference between contractual relationships and covenant relationships. So the whole death piece and the fact that we have like death. Death is a serious thing. Like death, when you make commitments to the armed forces, it's not I'm just going to do this until, no, it's until death,
Right.
So when death is involved, number one, it's serious, and number two, it's an underlying principle. Now you're asking me to be spiritual, so I'm doing it.
Please do it. Go.
It's death to self.
So it's not literally death until I'm dead in a coffin that we have to stay together. It's till the personal death.
Well, it's both. So the bringing the word death into the concept makes it serious, and then two, what's sort of our program of how to act? It's death to self daily. So if it's just contractual, like you and the camera set, hey, I need you to do this. Right. Here's the money, and then you both agree. But mobsters do the same thing. Crooked people do the same thing. People can have, even your enemy. But hey, let's take a break today. Let's not fight. That's a contract. Right. There's no covenant there.
Right.
Covenant goes beyond that, and so it's that when you're dying to yourself, when you're forgetting of yourself, we have that concept called kenosis. It's a Greek term. Have I brought that one up? I think I brought it up on a business term. But the idea is like to die to self, so that you can get to the higher peak.
Okay.
So in this concept of marriage, of dying to self, and you're constantly doing it, it's not so that the other person becomes, more proud and is exalted, and like in some marriages, like, oh, you're supposed to serve me, so die to yourself. well, that's what you're trying to point out.
Right. It's like in essence, it's true because there is some form of suffocation in some marriages, not mine, in some marriages that feel like death. Right. It's like you've lost your individuality. You no longer can go play golf. You can't, go hang out with the boys.
Yeah.
You probably aren't having intercourse as frequently as you did when you were single. So there's a lot of deaths that happen right off the bat for some relationships.
Right.
Which why I was shocked when Aggie said that infidelity was on the bottom of the reasons people get divorced. I thought that would have been right at the top. Yeah. Because I can tell you, so many guys I know are like, man, I just don't get it anymore. We got married and it's like all of a sudden it's like, we barely even touch each other.
Yeah. It's like
that's
less.
Sad.
Yeah. And so I guess the question we're proposing, you're saying death to self, what does that mean? I would propose the question, why marriage? Like, why even...
In the first place, you mean?
Yeah, why marriage in the first place? Like, why commit to each other on a serious level, and then why do it through the church? What's the meaning behind it? right?
Some people do it purely to please others.
Please others, okay.
Right? Your family,
Tradition, okay.
family, your mom and dad are pressuring you to get married in a church. Where I don't feel that pressure. Mm-hmm. And we actually got married we had a priest there, but we got married in like a Buddhist temple.
Oh.
In downtown Chicago. It wasn't even a temple. It was actually, believe it or not, it was a museum that imported a Tibetan temple and installed it inside of a big building in downtown Chicago. I loved the place because it was like, the decor was sick. Like, it was insane. And the vibe in there was amazing. Okay. And they had all the music. And Sherry and I were just like, you know what? We'll have the traditional priests. We'll have the traditional vows. We'll have all those things. But what if we change the environment a little bit? You know? And then we were like, we just both loved this place. And we're like, let's try it here. We had a small group of people we loved and family that were all there. And everyone thought it was a little odd and weird and like, why not the church and all that kind of stuff. But it fit our vibe. And that's kind of what my point in this whole conversation is like, marriage has become a institution. It's become a series of legal documents, right? Which then sets you up for, all right, you're already thinking, I'm trapped. I'm legally binded by this document that I have to unravel to get out of this whole thing. And I just go back to something that's probably, to give myself credit, more pure. Where if it was about the covenant and the church and that half of it, then why does it have to go to the second half of it? And that's why I was shocked when you said, yeah, we work with divorce attorneys. I would think that's probably the last thing you'd probably want to do is like, my goal is to stop you from getting there.
Yeah.
And I get it. If you're going together, then I'll connect you with somebody who's maybe a spiritual attorney or a Catholic attorney who understands, covenants and stuff like that. So that was a little shocking to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I brought in, we were sort of teaming up against, not against you specifically, but we're actually working together in the sense that she wants to help save marriages. That's why she does what she does.
Yeah.
And Aggie sees it more as a way of a boundary. She's sort of like a relational police officer, you know, and like, hey, okay, this is a limit, you can't pass these things. And then when things are sorted out, like when there's a car accident, what do? You call 911, the police comes and they sort of sort things out.
Right.
Police try to enforce certain laws to make sure that the accident doesn't happen in the first place. Now, the job of the priest is teach you how to drive. This car, this car is a manual, this car is a stick. What do you like? What's better for you? You like a bigger car or a smaller car? Like, I'm sort of that guy that helps you drive the vehicle. So when you go back to marriage, why marriage, I would say.
Yeah, but can I stop you for a second?
Go for
it. I hear you.
Okay.
But you're kind of the guy who's driving the simulator.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
not the real deal. I'm not married myself.
Right. So, like, you can speak to the things you've read and been told and learned.
Right.
But the whole emotional side of this, Father, is something I don't know if you could truly comprehend. Like, what goes on in the nuances of a marriage that you could talk about until you feel it, though, until you feel rejected, until you feel unloved and disrespected and all those things that a man can feel or a woman can feel. I don't know if you could truly embrace that and speak. I don't know. You tell me.
I'm not
knocking you. I'm just saying.
I get you. For now you're my friend still, so that's okay.
On this episode, we're still friends.
So I would agree with you. I don't know exactly the precise feeling of it, but the reason we have collared, uncollared, that's what gives me that credibility, because I try to have a covenant with everyone, but not on a sort of a, how would you say it, on a particular way. So the fact that I've given up my, I'm not from Chicago, I'm not from here. The fact that you give up a family, you give up money, you feel sort of abandoned. Your emotions go in different places.
Yeah.
This is a little bit what Jesus tried to do. Like, he could have come down and saved us in any way. Like, he could have just come down as a king and just sort of snapped his fingers, and then he would have, as in our faith, we believe he would open heaven again. But he chose to be born in a cave. He chose to live amongst us. He chose to choose some of his followers as tax collectors and prostitutes. Some of them were straight up bad sinners, but he chose to hang out with them to like feel what they felt. And so as his priest, we do the same thing. And this is why, one of the reasons why like we're doing this podcast, I feel, is like, let me hear you out in your way. So I appreciate, you challenging that piece. And to go back to your specific question, I try to have feelings like you do, in the sense of, how does it feel to be sort of neglected? How does it feel to just serve and not get any recompense? Like, you're working so hard, your wife comes home, you want her to listen to you, and meanwhile you have to listen to her. I mean, what do you think I do all day with confessions, spiritual directions, anointing of the sick? There's a lot of complaining, people on the phone, I don't want to say women, but there's a lot of people that complain all the time, So to take my job seriously, like, I have to be that spiritual father, like and bleed too, like suffer with you. So obviously I'm not trying to say, I'm look at me, I suffer more than you. No, that's sort of my goal. So anytime there's an opportunity, like, let me know.
So you can relate when, say, one of your followers comes to you and says, Father, my wife just,
cheated on you or something.
Or not even cheated on me, but she's holding back intimacy with me. I'm trying everything, but, we made this vow. We have this covenant, and, I'm only supposed to be with her, but, she rejects me, and she, and I'm being nice, and I'm doing all the right things, and she just won't go there with me, and it's decreased to maybe once every 6 months. And what do you, like, I don't know if you could feel that lack, truly, as a man who wants to be intimate with his wife. Again, this is not me, I'm just saying. I hear this across the board with a lot of my male friends who've been through divorce or still married. The biggest issue for them is, like, it's just changed. Like, they think it's okay to just not have sex anymore.
Right.
Like, at that point, you're roommates. Mm-hmm. You're raising kids and you're roommates.
Right.
Like how do you ever advise somebody in those situations, and what do you say to them? I mean...
Yeah, so two things there. One, you asked about the feeling.
Yeah.
Like, how
do you feel that intense of a letdown and lack and want?
Right.
Because it's not a shortage of these guys not wanting to be with their wife.
Right. And then two, like, what advice do I give?
Yeah.
So I would say part of the equation of being a good, fruitful priest is one who knows how to suffer and like takes it on. So there's a phrase, I think you might remember from the Gospels, he who follows me must pick up his cross. I don't know if you remember that one. No.
Do not remember. If I heard it would... Yeah.
So the concept is, like, if you really want to be a faith-filled person, especially following in Christianity, Jesus, like, you got to accept that suffering. So one of the coolest things entering seminary was the concept of taking it on, like, not being afraid of it. You look at, like, the Navy SEALs and their training and the whole BUD system and Hell Week, you've heard of, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
well, you've trained yourself.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? It's just they know if they aren't pushed to extremes, they're not going to be the elite soldiers that America will send to these special operations. Okay, great. You're a soldier. You want to serve, but go join the Navy. Go join the Army.
Yeah, but you're not a Navy SEAL. Is they're actually doing realistic training, getting shot at and shooting and being put in warlike environments and stuff, where you guys are kind of still just talking about it.
So on that note, like, when you leave home, like, the first 2 years that we do, there's zero communication with your family. Yeah. There's you literally have a suitcase and it's all freedom, and your superiors say, do you want to do this freely? Do you want to commit? And you commit 2 years at a time, then 3, and then the final, and then after that you are processed for ordination. But any of those sort of periods, those 2 years, 3 years, like, you can say, you know what, I think that was enough.
What's the dropout?
A lot
percentage?
High, very high.
Really?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I joined. I said, you know what, I probably won't make it, but let me just give it a shot. Because some of these guys are amazingly intelligent, great speakers, and I'm like, I'm just normal goofball. I'm probably gonna get, but some reason I made it through the program. But they teach you early on to suffer,
Yeah.
and to do it with joy and understand why you're doing it. So that feeling of rejection, maybe by your spouse, not you specifically, like we were saying, but like there are hours where you know we invest into people's lives, or we help certain people, and we don't hand them a bill. There is no it's for the mission, you know, and that training your mindset to serve, you know, like a company sitting hours in the hospital accompanying someone dying, you know, because maybe their family doesn't like them, or maybe they're abandoned. Who's going to do it?
Yeah.
Doctors are there, nurses are there, but the chaplain. You know, so I've been there hours by myself with a person that's about to die. I'm not getting paid for it, you know, and I'm not thinking of it because why do what I do? Like the firemen or policemen, it's a vocational thing. So in other words, why marriage? It's a vocation. You don't have to do it. Like, why do we have to do the church? Why do we have to do? You don't have to.
We didn't. I mean, that's exactly my point. Is we didn't. Yeah. We chose portions of it that resonated,
right,
and portions that we felt were true to us. And you know, there's times now where my wife's like, oh, we should, you know, do it in a church now, and like we did it that way. We should go back and get remarried and do it in a church, and I'm open to that.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Based on how this goes,
right?
If you pull me back,
I'm gonna send you a bill, by the way.
Right. All good. Send this. Pass it on to my wife.
But okay, so another piece, why marriage? Speaking of it as a vocation, like over time, like why do we get married when we're young, vocationally? Because you sort of grow up together, you know, and then naturally what will happen is some couples will grow apart. Does that mean the marriage is gone? Well, no, because you're learning together how to work together on that. So as a young seminarian, I entered 18, right after high school, 17, 18.
Wow.
Like, I didn't know clue what I'm signing up for, but over time, you start figuring out how you're able to help people, what your skill sets are. You know, I'm not good at like administration stuff at all, but I am a people person. I don't like working with what they call like the holy rollers that have a lot of I like working with people like,
challenging people. Is that what you're saying? Yes,
yeah, challenging people. So I like this, and like you don't have to pay me. I'll do this all day.
Yeah, well, it's fun. I mean, we're exploring different topics that are, I think, really interesting and hard hitting, and I'm sure a lot of people have these questions that just never had a friend who was a priest that they could really be candid with and say things like I say. I mean, I'm sure people think I'm nuts, but the reality is these are questions that I have, and I want to know, and I want people to know.
Absolutely.
You know, like that you're a human being and you're real, and you do have desires, and you have all these things that and you may not experience everything that we do. So what I wanted to bring up was the idea, and we touched on it lightly with Aggie, but it was the idea of like when the couple gets together, they tend to, if they don't stay individual in their interest, and they don't stay individual in who they are and their soul.
Right, that's her first point. I love that one. Mental health.
Mental health, which is fascinating, and it's so true because I feel, I mean, I've even been guilty of it, is you just get so codependent with each other, you lose yourself, you lose your interest, you lose everything to become this unit, this one, you know, and that's the problem.
Amen.
Because, we don't feel fulfilled anymore because all we're doing is trying to fulfill the other, and when she's trying to fulfill you, and it's just this cycle that happens, and it never ends well.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been more so in my later years really focusing on that note is like, how do I maintain my individuality without hurting my wife, without her feeling neglected, and then encourage her to do the same? Because it takes two people to believe that. You need to believe that it's okay for you to have friends, for you to go out on a Friday night with your friends, for you to take up a hobby and be away from me and the kids for a little bit. It's okay.
Right.
You know.
Just so to compliment, to answer, or just to follow up with that a little bit, and then the question you had before about what counsel would you give to someone who feels frustrated that their partner is not giving them that intimacy that necessary.
I want that specific answer. Like if you got one in your pocket, I want to hear it.
Yeah, so you're not going to like it tons because, you know me, I sort of talk in circles, but in confession, when people struggle with chastity, the first thing that I try to ask them or work with is how are they doing in general? Because chastity, you're always going to fall into, you know, especially like teenagers that are falling at pornography and like, you know, masturbation and stuff like that. Like it's not, that's not a problem in and of itself. It's sort of a consequence of something deeper, identity. And what you're talking about now is that self-worth. So they say in marriages, when the person isn't taking care of themselves or the marriage is going tough, the whole sexuality piece jumps to like 90% of the problems, when it should be 10% of your reality. You know, if there's zero intimacy, you know, then I'll talk to the couple and be like, hey, what's going on? Like, this is part of the deal. And not just physical intimacy, spiritual intimacy too, like deep conversations, understanding each other on a deeper tier. If there's none of that where you can share that, then it becomes the biggest problem. But before that, like to Aggie's point, it's how is each individual doing? So going back to that confession case, like I'll just say, hey, so are you in college? Are you doing how are your grades going? You know, or maybe they're in high school. Do you like school or not? So I help them focus more on that. Hey, how can we make yours? I'm frustrated with my parents. I don't like my team. My girlfriend doesn't. And then they fall into these sort of sins of lust.
So it's like escapism. They escape into pornography.
Yeah,
and
and a little bit of what Aggie was talking about. Like it's the infidelity is the last piece. I mean, she's just talking straight up stats.
Yeah.
So maybe to answer, what counsel would I give specifically to that? It's like, okay, how are you like? Ask yourself, how are you doing individually? Like, are you fulfilled with your work, with your ideals, with your talents, your skill set? Do you have enough space in that regard? Then I would say, okay, how's the relationship going? Not the whole sex piece. Like, how's the relationship going? Do you guys hang out? Do you do things together? Do you share hobbies? And if that's not in line, well, then how do you expect? Because if the partner expects the intimate act without the connection spiritually, well, then you're like a bunch of animals. You know, you just want to get stimulated, and your partner becomes, it's pretty much like mutually, it sounds bad, but like it's like mutually masturbating. There's no love there.
Yeah.
You know, so that idea of just being stimulated, then you really just turn into, you know, you fall back into the animal kingdom. And as humans, we're much more in that. We're driven, we're inspired, we motivate. So that's sort of the tiers. I don't know if you agree with any of that, but I was trying to throw it at you on a bigger.
There's some caveats to that, you know, where if you do kind of a side by side and say, well, then flip the script. The man is supposed to be the provider. The man is supposed to take care of the home. The man is supposed to do his duties, whatever those duties might be. And if he stopped doing those duties, what would happen? You wouldn't have a house over your head. You wouldn't have food in the fridge. But if I just felt like, oh, you weren't nice to me, so I'm not going to pay the bill this week.
Yeah. But you see how that's on the other person, not so much on you. And then this is the thing about the covenant. Like, it's a gamble. You don't know if your partner is always going to be faithful or not. And this is where that phrase where we started off today, until death do us part. You know what? I'm going to love you even if you hate me. I'm going to love you even if you don't serve me, if you become ugly, if you lose your memory. Like, that's when you make that covenant, especially at least in the sacramental marriage of the church, like, no matter what happens to you, you know, I'm going to do my piece. The covenant is not us, it's me.
So you're saying
I'm going to say, you know, put your blood on it. I'm going to do my part in this covenant.
Got it.
That's and as a priest, when the whole collared idea is like, Lord, the cool thing about my marriage with the church and God, we know that He's good, man. Like, I'm the problem, you know. Like, right. the problem with marriage is
you can't
like
be God in the marriage.
Yeah, you
I'm
don't
good.
know.
It's your problem. Yeah, right.
You don't know how your partner's going to respond, and so I recommend in certain marriages to take a pause. You know, hey, this is not, you're being toxic to each other. Just separate for a little bit. And just create some really strong boundaries, even if one person maybe has to be, you know, do a retreat for a week, you know, separate, come back, or even a certain period. There's nothing sinful about that at all. So that everyone can be in a good space. Like Aggie was talking about, get therapy, you know, like figure this out. And her point was like, especially men, like we're stubborn and stuff.
But it's also like men function, I think, a little bit easier than women in the sense that the basic things we need: good food, good intimacy, you know, good conversation, you know, conversation thing. But when the man is not getting the one of those basic three things, and he's doing what he's doing in the relationship, showing up and whatever, and maybe it's not perfect, but he has a need that she swore to fulfill as his sole female partner, and that's not happening as often as he would like. Regardless, no marriage is perfect.
Right.
No marriage is perfect.
Right.
Right? Everyone's going to disagree and have arguments and whatever. But when they circle back and the guy has a need, he, instead of masturbating and watching porn, he'd rather be with his wife.
Yeah.
At what point does duty come into that? And, I know it sounds crude, and I don't mean it personally. I'm just saying, like, based on covenants, like, part of it, there was a book that our producer Katie was talking about, Theology of the Body, where it talks about all these sexual things within the Catholic, bonding relationship that should happen.
Right.
But if that's not happening, what's the play there? That's where I think the infidelity comes in, is the guy gets frustrated. He's not getting it either as frequent or the way he wants to.
Right.
And is it part of her duty, like it's as part of his duties to do the things he has to do?
Right.
I don't know. How does that...
how does that translate?
Yeah.
No, I don't think what you're saying is wrong at all. But a good, deep conversation, it needs to be clear what the expectations are. So say for you, I hate using you as an example, but let's just say for an individual, physical intimacy, like physical touch, is a huge thing.
Men in general, that's how we express ourselves.
Yes.
Is physical touch.
Not for everyone, but
a large percentage
amount
of men.
I work with several cases where it's the opposite.
Well, and true.
So
it
just
could
let
totally
you know.
be the opposite. I agree. I'm not saying it's all one-sided, but you hear it more on the male side than you do on the female side.
True. So let's just say for the male person, once a week or physically intimate like that would be good.
Therapeutic, at least.
Okay. Now, for the woman, let's just say in this case, if that's the proposition we're proposing, maybe for her, something good for her would be once a month or once every 2 months, let's just say. So the contract would be, okay, hey, can we do, every few weeks? Obviously it has to be natural and spontaneous. Right. But you see how it can't just be what the man wants, but also her. Now, on her end, it's like, you're the provider. I want this, and you're just like, hey, that's just impossible. So you're gonna work a little bit extra. Say you whatever you provide her with, her $10,000 a month. I don't know if that's a lot or
a car or whatever. Yeah, whatever.
And say, well, I would love a better car for the kids with reason. And you're like, honey, we can't do that. So you're making her frustrated too, in the sense like, and then that's where that balance needs to happen, where you come to an agreement. But this is where,
but the nuance in that is, you're talking about a materialistic cost of something physical that would have to require an output of financial, means to be able to meet that need. Versus, I'm not asking you to go buy something. I'm not asking you to be with me. That's the last part. Like, I made this vow to you. You made this vow to me. I'm the woman you chose. You're the man I chose. Like, if you wanted it from me and you needed it, because it would help you mentally, if it released you in a way.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's something to that. And
there is, but if let's say if the woman comes to me in spiritual direction and says, Father, I'm pleasing my husband, but like, I feel like I'm just being used. Like I'm doing it. He's content, but he provides for me and this and that. What counsel would you give to me? And I would be like, well, that's degrading you. You're cutting yourself. You're cutting yourself. Like you're hurting yourself spiritually. So you need to figure out yourself first. Like, where in this are you comfortable with? And so if they come back to me and they said, pretty much nothing, Father, and I would be like, well, we got to work on that, because like this is what we signed up for too, Right. So I would almost counsel her, hey, do you mind if I talk to your husband about this as well? So you bring them together, and I would say, you're gonna have to give her a little bit of break, but she needs to figure this out to come up with something where she doesn't feel completely just used, And so there's that mutual understanding, and obviously over time, you see how that develops. Yeah, especially if it's like a loveless relationship and it's just utilitarian and way that you're taking care of the kids, and it's so I can totally understand that. It's a fascinating topic, and I'm not sure if there's a right or wrong answer to it. Really, it's such a unique dynamic because there's no book on this. There's no right or wrong
Apparently
way.
there is. The Theology of the Body is a book on this.
Well, it's a
I haven't read it. I got the cliff notes of it. And
Theology Body is like a collection of actually many conferences and books. John Paul II, Pope John Paul, wrote on the topic of what sexuality should look like, love and responsibility. Like, how does sexuality bring, what does it do to the individual, and how does it relate to marriage and love? So that's the topic. So it's not like, there's not like a questionnaire that says, how often a week would you like intimacy? And then how much you're a partner, and then there's like a mathematical equation.
There should be, maybe.
Well,
if you're figuring everything out with a prenup and a postnup, maybe that's included in. It's like, I require. So
this is where as a church, it's not just the priest, but as a church, these are the things we should be discussing together. Hey, how does your marriage handle this? How does obviously without being respectful.
Sure.
But that's where we can, in confession or in a more intimate setting, you can bring these things up to a priest or someone spiritual you can trust, and you can, or a therapist, and you can sort of hash out what the needs are, what the boundaries are, and how you can build together. Yeah. And essentially that's what a relationship should look like in love. Like every relationship, loving a relationship, say you have with your daughter, like you love her, you'll let her ask whatever, but there's certain times where like, hey honey, like dad needs to get this done, here just ask mom for this homework thing, I'll be right back with you, just give me an hour, but that's a boundary you're setting. Right. So every loving relationship will have that boundary and the expression of the needs as well. So
I mean it all comes back to communication.
Yes.
100% communication. And then through communication, if you can't come to terms on what works for both of you, then is that the point where you're reaching out to the priest or an Aggie and saying, hey, we got issues, we need a mediator to kind of figure this out?
I think especially when there's not specifically a problem, even to reach out and get advice from professionals and ask, like in your specific situation, not you, but the case you're bringing up. Yeah. I feel that there is, this is actually a business concept. Stephen Covey, if you've heard of the highly effective habits. Yeah. There's, I think the fifth habit or the fourth habit, he talks about something called the emotional bank account. Is that, I don't know if that rings a bell.
It does, yeah.
Okay, so the emotional bank account, just real quick, is we're always withdrawing from other people in relationships. Like when your wife says, hey honey, when you get a chance, if you can take trash out, I think, oh sure thing. But in your mind, it's a withdrawal. Like subconsciously, you're thinking, maybe, why did she say that? I always do it. Does she not think I'm responsible? Does she think I'm that dumb? In your mind, even though
it's
you just
stuff.
said,
it's our own stuff.
So that's a withdrawal. Yeah. So the principle of the emotional bank account is we need to consistently be investing into the other person according to how emotionally they feel. So,
but it's a cycle though. Like I hear what you're saying. It's like, all right, you pissed me off, I pissed you off. I'm investing, you're withdrawing, and then sometimes it just feels like it's a mouse wheel that just keeps going, a hamster wheel that keeps going and going and going.
And you're just in the negative.
And then you're in the cycle of resentment, and you didn't do this for me, I didn't do this for you, and we didn't. Then you got to it takes forever to connect again, and then when you connect, it's like, all right, we're stable. Yeah. Like let's not screw it up, and then one person says something wrong or does something wrong, and it's like, oh, we're back on the wheel again, and then we're playing this investment game constantly. Is it just ever freaking easy?
So when I would say if anybody feels like that, that's a great moment to just, all right, time out. Like let's just spend a weekend for us. I don't care. We'll pay for whoever with the kids. Like marriage is not about the kids. It's not the family. It's not about the business.
May I say, amen.
Amen to that. Right?
Amen to that.
Let's speak to a counselor, but just to bounce ideas off. Let's hang out with these cool couples and be intentional about just talking about if we're okay with it respectfully. Let's just spend, whatever, Friday, Saturday night and things like, hey, let's invite Father over and let's just talk about this over a scotch. And I think as long as both of you are working towards that, because eventually who loses out? Everyone. It's you're feeling empty, she's feeling empty, the kids are feeling empty. No, it's not going to stop. So, okay, let's take a pause and let's sort of calibrate. let's fill up our emotional banks, so we're not just continually withdrawing from each other.
Right, which
Set
goes
some
back to the individuality piece,
Yes.
where it's like if you maintained what fills your cup
Right.
individually, when you come together, there won't be the need to like, you have to fill my cup.
Yeah, right. So I would suggest anyone who is going through a hard time with that, especially marriage, just take a little time out, like a pause, and just acknowledge where you guys are at. And something that, because I work more on the front end with marriage preps and pre-Cana, like what I try to teach them early on, especially in their engagement. It's like the first question I throw at them is like, you guys are engaged. Why aren't you just married right now? Why do you have to wait a whole year until you're married? Is it because you don't have the hall booked, because you don't have a priest or a church? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, well, now this is where you do the testing stage to see if this really works. And so in the testing period, one of the things I have them work on is communicating to each other where they're at, like on a percentage level. They come home from work and it's like, honey, right now I'm feeling like a 40%, and the other person's like, yeah, I'm feeling like a 60 or whatever as well. Well, if it doesn't reach, 200, well, then someone has to give and take, or let's just not talk about hot topics right now, just because. So it's important to gauge where each other is at.
Sure.
And then maybe one person can step it up for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Someone just got laid off, or hey, I had to deal with this crazy thing. So to your point, communication is
everything.
so essential.
Yeah, and I hope us communicating this with you guys watching and listening helps you guys navigate the relationship. It's not an easy thing.
No. But I'm glad we're having an open conversation, and we'll see what else comes up, because if we have healthy marriages, the society will be so much better, because that's the base of the whole society.
I agree.
Government's not going to help out make a better society. No, it's the core nucleus of a mother, father, in the family, and how they relate to each other. But most importantly, that marriage, that covenant of how I was called vocationally to serve this other person, dying to myself so that others may live. That's the essential.
Takes a lot of self-work.
Amen.
A lot
Amen.
of therapy.
You see why I didn't get married?
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. I'm married to everybody.
He's got the answer right. Good stuff.
Hey, good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for tuning in. We're collared
and uncollared.
Wow, relationships are very complicated, especially that of marriage, one of the highest callings that we have in the church. It is a vocation. Just as myself, a priest, follows the call of God to give his life to serve the church, it's a calling to marry your spouse. And when you do so, it's truly dying to yourself so that others may live. So number one, we learned communication is key in marriage, and to know where you're at personally, and to communicate that to the others. But sometimes through prayer and through self-reflection, through a good conscience exam, you realize sometimes you need to work on yourself. As we learned, most of these cases happen of conflict or a possible divorce brewing when we're not healthy ourselves. When we know some of our needs aren't being met, we can't expect always the other partner to love us, right? Love is free. This whole marriage covenant is a free act. So what we do have to do is present ourselves as lovable and love as much as we can. So may you pick your spouse or the one you love up, so that together you may both be saved through this act. And by saving the one you love, hopefully all of society will be saved, and that will bring us to our next topic of salvation very soon. God bless you. We'll see you in the next episode.